And Acosta himself, who works in the Trump administration now, said back when he was the prosecutor that that Epstein was tied to government intelligence. When they attack me, I feel obligated to win because I know I'm over the target. The dogs don't bark at parked cars.
So recently, Thomas Massie went on James O'Keefe's podcast to explain the price of defying Trump and the Trump administration over its cover-up of the Epstein Files. He gets into why he's trying so diligently to work with the victims of Epstein to get these files released, despite the fact that it makes him persona non grata in Washington right now. So let's get into it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
We say back in Kentucky, they wouldn't be spending $20 million. You can't hold two thoughts in your head simultaneously. You can't say Massie is ineffective in Washington, D.C., and then also observe that they're spending $20 million against me to get me out of D.C. It's the reason they're doing that is I am effective. The press conference we had yesterday was the biggest one up here in 5 years.
Biggest press conference in Washington.
Yeah.
Is that because of all the number of press people there, or how does that measure?
The number of cameras, the number that were there, the number of networks that carried it live.
And a lot of them are just trying to get a political, cudgel against Trump, probably, right? Or
some of the Democrats are, but that's a distraction. I don't think the president himself is implicated in any of these files. If he were, Joe Biden probably would have released these files.
That's what I asked these protesters. They didn't have a good answer for that, by the way.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that. I love Massie. He's a hero for standing on principle to try to get to the bottom of this. But Trump would be behaving this way, and Biden would have behaving this way if both sides were implicated. And even if Trump was implicated, there wouldn't have been a mass release during Biden if their side of the uniparty was implicated too, or high-ranking bureaucrats that don't exactly wear a particular flavor of the Washington tribes, but does maintain power nonetheless. I do think that's explainable, but it is true too that they're throwing the house at Massie, trying to take him down like AIPAC did in his last election. AIPAC alone spending $400,000 to try to take him down, and him triumphing. He has made himself persona non grata in Washington for a good reason. It's for principle.
Yeah. So this isn't about Donald Trump. It's about people who are actually richer than Donald Trump and have a lot of influence because they give money.
Do people go up to you privately and, like I said, just say, like, I agree with you, like in this building, hey, I keep doing what you're doing, but I can't talk about it. Does that ever happen to you?
It happens every week.
Happens every week.
Yeah. People are like...
And you have to protect their confidence. You have to protect their anonymity because they're confiding in you that they secretly support you, but they don't want to say so publicly, for example, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to say that, then they would never confide in me again. And those are my closest friends.
Your closest friends.
Only, your enemies up here don't come and say, I think what you're doing is right, but I just can't be with you. I can't die on this hill. But your friends do.
Do you think that those people, without naming any names, do you think that they should be more brave and say it publicly, or it's just the nature of politics or the nature of human nature that you can't be public with that?
I mean, obviously, I would like for them to join me. For some of them, the political reality is they would probably lose their reelection if Donald Trump came against them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad story about Washington. Massie's in kind of a unique place where people in his district admire him for his honesty, for standing on principle regardless of who's in power, and voting for truth and individual liberty and against the wars and against the Israel lobby regardless of the political circumstances. But a lot of representatives aren't in that position. I hope there becomes more and more that win elections and withstand this massive financial crusade against people like Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene for standing on principle. But the political realities is that you can't buck the system so much like Massie does in every single district in the United States, and that's a harsh reality that we should all wake up to.
Some of them are here because they were in a 7-way primary and they got Donald Trump's endorsement, and that was their major redeeming factor in an election where there was no incumbent, so people went with the Trump candidate. And now they're incumbents, but they haven't been here very long, and so they haven't built trust with their constituents yet. And by the way, I might be losing my next election over this. You have to get in a headspace where you're okay with that.
Yeah, standing on principle regardless of what happens, regardless of how the chips may fall. That's what Massie's doing. He really is sticking his neck out there, jeopardizing his political future, but in my estimation, for a very good cause. Marjorie Taylor Greene, too. I think these two will be proven to be on the right side of history, regardless of what the Trump administration says, and regardless of what his representatives in his own district say. I'm thankful for people like Massie for not just aspiring for political ambition at all costs.
And too many of my colleagues are not okay with losing their next election if that's what it costs. You said, what's the name of your podcast?
Price is My Life.
The Price is My Life. Look, it's not even our life, right? The price is my reelection, I would say.
So you are resolved, or you are okay with that possibility?
Yeah.
Psychologically.
Yeah, and then, when I was at this press conference yesterday with the survivors, I got to thinking, for these survivors, the price is their life. Like, this could ruin their lives by speaking out yesterday. And here we've got members of Congress who won't even take a risk in their next election to do the right thing.
One more major, that's an insane story. And speaking of redactions, I sent you the FBI raid affidavit in my case, where they literally redacted every single word of the probable cause. That's the justification for the search warrant. In a case where they admitted there was no indictment, there was no crime, they redacted every single word. And it stands to reason that if they can't even be transparent about why they raided a newsroom, why the Department of Justice raided a journalism organization, they can't even tell you why they did that, it stands to reason they're not going to tell you, what really happened with Jeff Epstein here. So
not voluntarily.
Well, not voluntarily.
Yes, certainly not voluntarily. They're doing everything they can to resist this, any kind of transparency, despite the campaign promises from people like Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel saying we need to get to the bottom of this. And not only we need to get to the bottom of this, but Biden is covering this up. So you need to elect this guy to get to the bottom of it, yield the answers for the American public. Well, since he's been in office, it's been nothing but deflections. It's been nothing but diversions, dragging people like Massie for trying to get to the bottom of it. That's not the only reason he drags Massie, also for opposing his unconstitutional and immoral strikes against Iran, for plummeting the country into debt, all the corporate welfare and spending in the big abominable bill. All those things put a crosshair on Thomas Massie. But that's why he's a hero, and that's why he needs to be protected at all costs.
And so what's happening right now is they are curating the release of material to the Oversight Committee. And I showed the chairman of the Oversight Committee yesterday the documents he was getting. I'm like, here's the flight log. It's completely redacted. Like, not all of the people on that plane were victims. I said, somebody had to fly the plane. Like, can we at least know who the pilot was? Like, it was crazy.
Is it all just...
Yeah, they want to hide a lot of the people, not necessarily prominent people. They do want to hide them too, but people close to Epstein that worked for him, because that's potential whistleblowing too. Someone that worked for Epstein, maybe a low-level, staffer or butler or something like that. He employed lots of people to take care of his properties, his many properties in New Mexico and Florida and Ohio and, on the island. And those people might talk, but a lot of them haven't yet, but they want to redact the names such that we can't ask those people questions. And they sure haven't asked Les Wexner any questions either, still, despite giving Epstein millions of dollars and a $77 million residence in Manhattan, the biggest private residence in Manhattan itself.
To protect sources and methods. That's my hypothesis.
I think it's to avoid embarrassment for some very rich and powerful people. And I think it is, to some degree, to protect sources and methods methods of which American people might not approve of if they knew their tax dollars were using those methods.
And probably connections to Israel, too, because that's where all of Epstein's circumstantial connections are, too. With being the protege of Robert Maxwell, with running in circles, and Adnan Khashoggi and Douglas Leese's arms trafficking arrangement in Israel during Iran-Contra, for his relationship with Ari Ben-Menashe, who said not only was Epstein a Mossad agent, or asset, I should say asset, there is a difference there, but also that Ari Ben-Menashe said Epstein told him he was running a blackmail operation. For him being close to 4 Israeli prime ministers, including Ehud Barak, who visited him 30 times and stayed for prolonged periods at his residence in Manhattan, that he paid Ehud Barak $2.3 million to write 2 essays, one of which he didn't finish. All of these connections paint a picture, but they don't want to divulge the files, possibly because it would be embarrassing to the U.S.-Israeli relationship. As if that isn't already embarrassing enough, with so many Americans turning against Israel for what it's doing in Gaza, for drawing us into wars such as Iran, etc.
Very last question, very quickly. What was your favorite moment from your press conference yesterday?
Oh, my favorite moment. I won't call it my favorite moment. I'll tell you what kept me up last night, like sick to my stomach, was when one of the women recanted her story. Actually, 2 women, one was in Florida and one was in New York. They basically told the same story. When they were 14, somebody in their high school said, "Hey, you want to go give a rich guy a massage and get $200? He's got a really nice house and all this." And she says, "Sure." She goes, the door closes with Jeffrey Epstein. He sexually assaults her. He tells her, "Whenever I call you, you need to come over here and I'll pay you $200 again." And the thing that makes me sick to my stomach is eventually he said, "You got to go back to your high school and bring me another 14-year-old. And the girl admitted that she did it because, and she got $200 for doing it, but she didn't have to get sexually abused if she would.
It's just heart-wrenching, it's vile, it's brutal, it's treacherous, and he got away with this for so long. There were over 40 witnesses stacked up with the prosecution against him in Florida in that first case, I think in 2006. And he got that sweetheart deal from Alex Acosta, who said, "Hey, I laid off Epstein because he was above my pay grade, because I was told he was intelligence." Well, who told you, Alex Acosta, that he was intelligence? There weren't that many people above him in the DOJ. Maybe Alberto Gonzalez at that time. And this is just criminal and vile, and we want to still conceal this if you're part of the Trump administration, giving him cover for this. Don't let the files out. Don't let Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie's strategy work. It's so sickening. It's just absurd.
Bring him somebody else. So not only was there evil being perpetrated on her, she was convinced to do evil or forced to do evil. I think that's disgusting. And then what else we learned, this is very close to that same thing, is that once they got to be like 16 or 17 or 18, they were too old for Jeffrey Epstein. And he would farm them out to friends, not all of them, but some of them.
It's so sick and twisted. What more can you say about it? And Massie's clearly being affected emotionally by these stories that are real, that are supported by the documentation. And yet there's this blame the victim mentality. These women aren't naming names right away. Well, guess what would happen if they did? They'd end up like Virginia Giuffre, who died in mysterious circumstances a few months ago. She was suicided, like Jean-Luc Brunel, like Epstein. Her life was a living torment because of what she went through, because she did name names. That's why. And that's why I hope they do list the names and then have Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie read them from the House of Representatives floor.
He would facilitate other people to have sex with, sexually abuse them. This gets to the heart of this matter. Okay, there are 2 things that went really bad in the Epstein case. Number one, he got off with a very light sentence and then committed these heinous acts to hundreds of kids. Like, before this press conference, I wondered, should I be calling him a pedophile, or were these like older, girls? No, he was a pedophile. He didn't even want them once they got to the legal age of consent. So two things went really bad. For some reason, and Acosta himself, who works in the Trump administration now, said back when he was the prosecutor that Epstein was tied to government intelligence. Okay, but for some reason they let him go back out and recommit these things. And then the other thing.
Yeah, not only that, he was promoted to be the labor secretary under Trump during the first Trump administration after that sweetheart deal. After the DOJ unprecedentedly came out and said this was a bad idea, that we did this for Epstein, he was promoted to be the labor secretary. And there's no, real good information out there from the Trump administration. What was your reasoning after this debacle? And debacle's putting it lightly. This was criminal, just criminal beyond measure to give this guy a sweetheart deal with a 6-day-a-week, 12-hour-a-week work release program to bounce between properties, internationally over this, to have your own wing carved out of the sheriff's department where it really even wasn't a jail. It's just so absurd.
That's really bad about this situation, which is what I want to get to, is it wasn't just Maxwell and Epstein who committed these crimes. There were other people involved. There were people that facilitated it. There were people who participated in it, and none of them have seen one day in jail. And a lot of those are still out there. And the DOJ wants you to believe they don't know who they are.
Yeah, they want you to believe Epstein killed himself, that there's no clients, there's no associates that engaged in any illegal activities with Epstein. They want to just shut the door on that and any embarrassing revelations about Epstein's governmental connections, of which we're pretty sure existed.
That's preposterous. That's like, if you're an American and you're saying, and I have some colleagues who say this, they say, man, I just hear all that and my mind goes blank because I hear it so much. I'm tired of it. Let's move on. But if that's your mindset, you need to understand that the U.S. government has let criminals go free, Epstein at first, and then others still now, because, and the argument right now is for why they can't release these files is there are people in there who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein who shouldn't have to be embarrassed by being in a release of information.
Then redact those names, but don't redact the names of criminals that need to be indicted and charged. We know, the American people know, that there were people associated with Epstein that aren't guilty of crimes. That's just natural. So divulge the information like you did with Russiagate and let us make up our own minds about the Russiagate fiasco like you should do with the Epstein Files. Let us make the decision of who's guilty or not based on the documentation that exists, and let justice be carried out against them.
The problem is, within that list of people that they think shouldn't be embarrassed are actual criminals who should be prosecuted.
Yeah.
And so one of the objections to releasing all this material, once you get past the fact that we are going to protect the victims, one of the objections is this embarrassment thing, but we got to get over that. We got to get all this out there and let people sort through, okay, this guy knew Jeffrey Epstein because he funded the scholarship that Epstein gave, right? Whereas this guy was a sexual predator.
Yeah, that's exactly what needs to happen. The American people should have it within their own volition to determine that and let justice be served. Let us decide based on the information. That is what you put forward as part of your campaign pledge to kind of be a free speech champion, to drain the swamp, to bring transparency from the murky underbelly of the deep state. But Trump isn't doing that at all. And we've seen him go from saying it's a Democratic hoax to saying it's boring to saying you're not my real supporters if you still want answers about this child sex trafficking ring that, by the way, my subordinates promised to give you. You might as well be anti-MAGA if this is what you want and you call yourself a supporter. It's so absurd. People see through it, and this is hurting the Trump administration. It has for some time, and I think it will jeopardize the rest of his agenda. I hope it jeopardizes his inability to grapple with serious foreign policy situations too, as he talks and floats the idea of regime change in Venezuela right now, of all things, after starting a new war with Iran, after bombing Yemen for a month, after continuing to aid Ukraine, not shutting down that, despite saying he'd end that war day one. Well, you're still funneling money into Zelensky's coffers, and it's flirting with a nuclear war still, by the way, with Russia, and there's no end in sight to that war because you're not willing to do what it takes. All these things are revolving around the Epstein story. The Epstein story is emblematic of a deep-seated cover-up that both parties engage in, with both parties and peoples of prominence involved in it. That's why we call it the Uniparty. But standing above those people in terms of morality are people like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I applaud them. I hope their strategy works. I hope those victims get justice, and I hope Americans get answers as to how Epstein acquired his wealth, who is involved in his crimes, and which intelligence operations and countries he was working on behalf of. But I do want to hear from you. Let me know down below. Is Thomas Massie right? Is he heroic for defying Trump on the Epstein Files? Will we actually get answers to this situation ever? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to James O'Keefe. Great interview here, James. James is such a valuable journalist in a world where there's lots of propagandists and not many journalists, but he's one of them. Please also consider joining my channel by clicking the join button below. Become a member and you'll support the channel, and in return for that, I'll give you access to all my videos that are members only before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.